This week on the Mindful Men podcast.
What was the impact on business as well? You mentioned that you closed the businesses not long after.
Yeah, so I really wasn't traveling well at this stage, whereas I thought I've got a business, I've got all the toys, all the shiny things, we've got plenty of money in the bank, happily married, we finally got our daughter, so everything should be good, but it wasn't. I was starting to get a lot of suicidal thoughts and was drinking a lot by this stage.
And so most guys struggle to ask for help. Did you ask for help from anybody? Did you get help from anybody?
I did. So it took me a little while. It was our first Mother's Day. We were out on our boat for the weekend. We had a niece's birthday happening up the Brisbane River. So we went and camped out in the bay, woke up for Mother's Day, cooked breakfast, cruised up the river to this birthday. And then, so me and my wife are no longer together, but my wife at the time said, "Are you going to say anything about Mother's Day?" And I'm going, "Well, you're not my mum. It's not up to me." Nothing clicked with me. I just had no realization of what was happening in the world around me. I was just so consumed inside. And that was the wake-up call that I needed to ask for help. So that's when I went to the doctors, got referred to a psychiatrist and was diagnosed with PTSD, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and alcohol dependence, and started on medication straight away. Played that game for about 6 months and I didn't really see the improvement that I needed. And then it was just after Christmas coming into 2017 that I just had enough and I went and got drunk. I gambled a lot that day and had a plan to end everything that night, and somehow ended up on the phone to, it was Vietnam Veterans Counselling Service back then, but Open Arms now. Ended up on the phone to them somehow. An ambulance came and picked me up and I was taken to the mental health unit for veterans at the Green Slopes Private Hospital.
And thinking about how you were presenting at work, and you said all these different jobs and your own business, did you have a feeling it might have been linked to your military career? You talked about PTSD, or is that separate?
I don't think I gave myself time for anything from my military to sink in. So it may have changed now, but when you're in and surrounded by everyone going through the same as you, it's just normal. You don't really notice a difference. And then I went straight into work where I was busy and just kept that high flow of stress and tempo going and didn't let anything bubble. Every Anzac Day after I got out, all the old diggers would go, "Oh, have you spoken to DBA? Have you got all your claims in?" I'm going, "Well, there's nothing wrong with me," while I'm writing myself off into an absolute drunken mess. And it wasn't until I said there was something going on and spoke to the doctors, they talked a little bit about my past and went, "Well, this is all reflections on what you've been trained for and what you've been through." But it had never clicked with me before that.
And you mentioned that you're not married anymore. What was the impact to your ex-wife?
When I went to hospital the first time, so I was in there for 3 months. During that time, I got told I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. I'd never work again, which I believe because you don't know what you don't know. I had another business as well by then. So we sold our businesses. We had a caravan. So once I got out of hospital, we packed our house up, hopped in the caravan, went traveling for a year, which sounds ideal, but when you're not that mentally stable, putting yourself in a 22-foot box for an extended time maybe isn't the right thing to do. And we did that for 12 months. And after we settled, we split pretty soon after that.
Yeah, talk us through that traveling, because often when we struggle with a mental health condition, we feel like isolating from the world and we want to go off and just not be talked to and be on our own. What was that year actually like being in that caravan traveling?
I found it hard to sit and relax. So I was not anywhere near in a space where I should have been looking for work, but I was looking for work the whole way along. So there was one stage when we were in Tasmania that I applied for jobs in Broome and I got one, and we were going to drive, I think, 8 days straight to get to Broome for me to do this work. I just didn't feel like I had the right to sit there and relax and take in the scenery and just enjoy my family. I was way too busy in the mind to appreciate the moments that we had.
I can certainly attest to that as someone with lived experience as well, just not being able to relax. And that's where I turn to alcohol, is to slow the mind and feel kind of normal, slow the brain down so I can relax. Is that why we're using alcohol, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's just where I felt chilled and normal. And I didn't see a problem because I was making money. I was getting to work early every morning. I was working late every night. So I couldn't have a problem with alcohol because alcoholics sit in a park drinking out of a brown paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of shame and stigma associated with that. And I've been reflecting on my own journey recently. And since I turned 40, I've been sober since then. But it's that shame and stigma of associating myself with alcoholism because I had that mental image of sitting on a park bench with a brown paper bag as well. I didn't feel like that was me. Like I felt like I was a much higher performer than that, like nowhere near that kind of stereotype. And I know a lot of guys don't want to say, oh, I struggle with alcohol, or I'm an alcoholic, or I want to go to AA. There's very much of a very much of a taboo topic still today.
Yeah, definitely. So I put it into my mind that last Anzac Day would be my last day of drinking alcohol. So I didn't go over the top as I would have previously. I had a few beers, and then the next day is when I stopped drinking. So I'm just over 6 months and feeling amazing.
Yeah. So you've had the crash after your career and the birth of your beautiful daughter, the roughie. Where did wellness come into you? Where did you start to get well again?
2 years after I was hospitalised the first time, I ended up back in that same hospital 2 years to the day. And I would say there would have been 80% of the same people in there lining up every morning to get their medication, to get knocked out and go back to bed. I started questioning some things. I wasn't feeling well, obviously, being back in hospital. And the answer for everything was just have some Valium, go back to bed and just sleep it off. And I went, well, I'm not even 40 yet. I'm pretty sure I've got more to life than going through this. I spoke to my doctor about some techniques about getting off medication, which he had absolutely no interest in. So I found a psychiatrist that would, and I started researching other ways to naturally improve my mental health, which led me down the path of yoga, meditation, mindfulness. I got into some essential oils, CBD oil, exercise, eating right. And I just worked out that if I want to get better, it's up to me. No one out there is there to help me get better.
Yeah, I want to talk about the yoga and the meditation, because you had such a busy mind, and then to go into yoga and meditation where we want to have calm mind, but initially our minds still race. And I find it really challenging to go into a meditative state, or even to try and do yoga sometimes. What benefits, or first, before we get to the benefits, how much of a struggle was it to do yoga and meditation for you initially?
Meditation still is a struggle for me, but there's plenty of different types of meditation that you can do. But yoga, to start with, I did it in hospital that time. The second time I was hospitalized, we just did a couple of classes on YouTube. And once I got out of my head, I went, that was pretty good. I didn't think about anything else that whole time apart from me breathing, not falling over and not farting, which is 99% of what yoga is. So once I got out of hospital, I called up my local studio and said, whatever it is that you do here, I need to be here every day. So think I paid for an annual membership up front, and I started going to all of the hard classes because I thought I need to be sweating, I need to be working again, because I deserve to relax.
Yeah. Did you find a particular style of yoga that worked better for you? I know there's some different styles.
So I was doing vinyasa yoga every morning. So that's more of your moving flow strength sort of class. So I was doing a 6 a.m. class every day, and I did that for probably about 9 months. And then I tried a yin yoga, which is the exact opposite. So it's your yang and your yin. Your yin is holding poses for between 4 and 7 minutes and a lot kinder to your mind and body. And once I did a few of those and could kind of get out of my head, I went, this is exactly where I need to be. And I need to work out how to teach this to people, because everyone needs to know about this.
When I first did my yoga, it was about 2020 when I burnt out, and I had this mysterious back pain that I needed to do something. So I tried Pilates and yoga. But one of the things that kind of held me back a little bit at first was this notion that these aren't manly things to do. And I did find a men's yoga, and so we're all stiff wooden planks, and there's a lot of farting going on. There's one guy that fell asleep almost every session at the end. Did you find that like it was a play on your sense of what it means to be a man to go and do yoga?
It did to start with, but then once you get into it, yoga's been a male only thing for thousands of years. And it was only the early 1900s women were actually allowed to practice and got taken to Hollywood and popularized. So this had been a men's practice for thousands of years. I'm lucky the studio that I was going to used to have, I'd say, at least a quarter of the participants were men. And by the time I finished there, it would have been half, I'd say. And it was, I guess it's very welcoming for men to be there. I think a lot of women like having the male energy around them as well in these sorts of spaces. So it's a perfect combination for male and female.
Yeah. And so you've become a yoga teacher or yoga instructor, and you do some work with frontline yoga. Is that right?
Yeah. So I did my yoga teacher training the opposite to how most people do it. So I did 100 hours of yin yoga teacher training to start with. And then I did restorative, which is teaching you pretty much how to prop your body to take every bit of pressure off. And then you're staying in poses for 25 minutes. And then I did my 100-hour traditional yoga teacher training where you learn your hatha and vinyasa styles. I've taught for the last few years at various studios, only teaching yin yoga, which is the more restorative, mindful side. And I combine mine with essential oils and sound healing at the end. Mine's all about length the mind over the body. I have a lot of elderly people that come to classes, a lot of people with injuries. So we just get them set up in a safe way, however their body looks, but it's all about what's going on up here, just adding to some plasticity through the mind. All of the teaching that I've done over the years has all been voluntary. Don't feel right charging for what I do. I think everyone should be able to get yoga for free, which I'd love to be able to provide on a bigger scale. But at the beginning of this year, I connected with Frontline Yoga, who provide free yoga for all frontline workers. So that picks up your doctors, nurses, SES, Marine Rescue, and of course the military and first responders, plus anyone else in the community that doesn't fit into that category can come along by donation. So I started running that in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym here on the Sunshine Coast, which was awesome for the padded floor, as all of my classes are on the floor. But I really wanted to get it into a yoga studio, and there's another yoga studio up here, Co Yoga, which is also owned by a veteran who was trying to get free yoga in there for military and emergency services. So I just said, well, I'm doing it already, so how about I provide that in your studio? So that's a free weekly yoga every Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. Do you find that you being a vet helps inspire other vets to come into the class as well?
I think it does. So I don't share now, but I used to share my story at the start of every class. So that would especially help new people to understand that I'm not just a yoga teacher. I've been exactly where they are, and I've come out the other side with a lot of work and continued work, but just to show them that it is definitely possible to get out of the feelings that they're in at the moment and to use these practices to be able to assist them along the way.
And have you noticed any positive outcomes for some of the people coming along?
Definitely. So I used to have a lady who I would share my story every week. She would come, she wouldn't really talk to me. She'd just come to everything that I ran. She'd listen to my story, she'd do her yoga and then go away. And after about 6 months, she came up to me and said she'd been on antidepressants for 35 years. And just from coming here, listening to the story, practicing yoga, she had gone down to a quarter of what she'd been on, and she was planning on using her doctor's guidance to be able to get off. And I'd put that down to just a positive mindset of seeing what can happen when you really want it to.